Recognized for his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am offering the Cohen-Hahn amendment, which concerns safety and health, shrinking airline seats. And I'd like to have everybody pay attention as we play a short video to show where this issue has gotten to. If you'd roll the video, please. Would you have volume on? Volume's necessary.
Is that you, Cohen?
That's me. We're not going to get an Oscar for best audio.
Torture device.
How long will they keep them strapped in there?
Sometimes hours at a time.
Roll it back gruesome, please.
Behold the bounty of Earth.
Rewind.
This is the cube of Rubik. This
Gentlemen,
simple
watch.
puzzle was actually considered unsolvable.
Roll this thing.
Is that the beginning? From the top.
From the top. There's a man in a little booth over in that corner over there somewhere.
Behold the bounty of Earth. This is the cube of Rubik. This simple puzzle was actually considered unsolvable by the humans.
Do they not have brains?
Simple ones. Now, this was apparently a 21st century torture device.
How long will they keep them strapped in there?
Sometimes hours at a time. Pretty gruesome.
That's enough. That is enough. It is a huge problem. The American public has found that that is a torture device. And when things get to be so much that it's humor in a $5 million Super Bowl ad, it has come to the position that Congress should act regardless of the strong interests that oppose this for financial reasons. This ad aired in the Super Bowl. It's funny, but this issue is not funny. People have gotten larger since seats were shrunk. Seats used to be 35 inches in width. They are now 31 inches in width on average. They used to be 18 inches in width, and they've gone down to 16 and a half. And there used to be a pitch of 35 inches before airline deregulation, and now it's just 31 inches. This affects safety and health, and people being able to get out of an airline safely with reduced seats and reduced pitch is a threat to the flying public. And we should be concerned not just with comfort, but particularly with safety and health, because there will be a crash and there will be people who will not be able to get out of an airplane because of this situation, and they'll have lungs filled with smoke, and they'll be dead. And then we'll do something about it. We should do something now. The average size of Americans has been growing. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the average man in 1960 weighed 166 pounds, and the average woman 140. Now the average man is 196. That's up 30 pounds, and the average woman 166. That's up 26 pounds. And both men and women are now about an inch taller. Doctors warn of deep vein thrombosis, which can afflict passengers who don't have their legs, move their legs enough on longer flights. This amendment would direct the FAA to establish a minimum seat size for the safety and health of passengers. I want to encourage my colleagues to understand this is about safety and health, not about comfort, and it requires the FAA to do what is necessary for the safe and health of passengers. If you vote against the amendment, you're voting against the safety and health of the flying public. Safety and health should never be sacrificed for higher profits, more individuals on a plane for higher margins. Passengers are tired of being squeezed fiscally and physically, and they want safety when they're on an airplane. I want to thank Congresswoman Hahn for adding her name to this issue and for her support, and I'd like to yield for her for any remarks she'd like to make.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleague, Mr. Cohen, for letting me work with you on this amendment. You know, over the years, I, along with my fellow travelers in coach, can't help but notice that planes are more crowded. They have smaller seats and less legroom. Planes are flying at capacity. Gone are the times of flights with free middle seats. Boarding a plane has become a battle between passengers to secure space in the overhead compartments to avoid checked baggage fees. And I'm sure we've all read that this has led to air rage. Passengers are getting into fights over the use of products like the Knee Defender, a gadget that actually stops the seat in front of you from being able to recline. And as you've heard from my colleague, Representative Cohen, not only are these supposed cost savings measures affecting the mental and physical health of everyday passengers, they're putting our safety in jeopardy. I think what we're proposing is very reasonable, that the FAA take both safety and comfort into account and establish minimum seat sizes and end the squeeze on passengers. Thank you. I yield back.
Well, gentleman's time has expired. I oppose this amendment, and I don't oppose it because I don't care about safety or I oppose safety. I oppose it, well, I understand the gentleman's position, but we already have a provision in the bill looking at evacuation standards for aircraft. The evacuation study will look at, or not current standards, allow passengers to safely evacuate and make necessary recommendations, which would be, I'm sure, looking at the seats. It's not the role of the DOT to issue these regulations based on comfort, but it certainly is based on safety. That's why it's included in the bill, so I would urge all members to oppose the bill.
Would the gentleman yield?
Ms. Edwards first.
I yield to Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. I appreciate that. This, Mr. Chairman, your provision doesn't specifically talk about pitch and seat width. It talks about evacuation. This amendment, which is only about safety and health, doesn't require the Department of Transportation to do anything that would reduce the seat size. It says they have to do a study on safety and health. And if the airlines, and I know they oppose it, but if the airlines are so sure their smaller seats are safe and not an impediment to safety and health, and even if the FAA might or might not agree, why are they worried about this amendment and opposing it? If the smaller seats are as safe as the airlines claim, then the FAA will simply establish a minimum size that all airlines meet. This can do no harm, it can only do good, and it can save people's lives. And the American public is fed up with it, and there's safety problems here and health problems here as well as comfort problems, and we have been squeezed long enough.
Will the gentlelady yield?
Ms. Edwards controls the time.
Will the gentlelady yield?
Mr. Davis is asking for time.
No.
I don't know. He may be. I think he is.
The gentlelady has...
I'll yield a minute to the gentleman.
Thank you. How much do you estimate this study is going to cost?
I think the amount of lives that it might save, it'll be dirt cheap and it'll be worth spending. It's about saving lives, and I don't know what you put the value of a life on.
Well, I mean, I see we have some different size seats here in the House. Mr. Chairman has a larger seat. Do you think the House Administration Committee should study seat sizes here?
We're not in airplanes that are crashing and having 180 people trying to get off at one time to get to a ramp to save their life.
Reclaiming my time, I yield the balance of my time to Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. This is not about seats here, Mr. Davis, and I appreciate you. This is not a funny issue. This is about people's safety and health. And the airlines have been deregulated. They're down to 4 major carriers, and they do what they want to do because they can. If you don't live in one of the major cities in this country, you don't fly out of Chicago or New York or Los Angeles or Atlanta or Dallas, you have to take what flights they make available on maybe one airline, and you probably not a nonstop. It is, and they talk about market conditions. There are no longer market conditions. This is a controlled industry by the industry, and the public be damned. And safety and health is something we shouldn't allow to happen, not in the name of marketability, not market conditions or anything else. This can do no harm. It can only do good. And one day there's going to be a crash, and there will be people that cannot get out of those seats. It's hard to get out of them right now. I've sat next to people I thought they were from the WWE. Big guys. I don't know how they got in their seats. And we were sitting in the bulkhead. I don't know how they'd have gotten out. And if they would have gotten out, nobody would have got out after them. I can tell you that. They were big guys. But big people have trouble getting in and out of those seats, and the seats are smaller and smaller. Some people say, oh, well, we should be concerned about obesity. It's what we have. It's the way people are. And the seats have been smaller and smaller, and people have gotten larger, and that is not safe for an evacuation. This can do no harm to do a study. And I think the study will show that the American public safety is at risk.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Davis recognized.
I yield the balance of my time.
Your time has expired, I thought.
Do I control the time now?
Edwards yields. Mr. Davis is recognized.
Mr. Cohen, I appreciate your insistence on making air travel safer. And I think the underlying bill will address many of those issues. But I think we got to the root of what this issue is. It's your issue with the airline industry as a whole rather than just this specific study. And that's okay. That's okay. But I don't think we should be able to require the FAA to spend taxpayer dollars on what I would consider a redundant study that's still not going to address the obesity issue and the issue of people not fitting into seats on airplanes. And Mr. Cohen, and I appreciate you said, this isn't a funny issue. You and I have a relationship where we've been pretty funny with each other on the floor of the House. Yes, Mr. Nixon. And I'm a little bit offended. You show such a great video like that, and now I can't even joke with you about it anymore because it's against safety? Seriously?
Would you yield?
No.
I want you to be funny.
I was just then. I would oppose this amendment. I would urge the rest of the committee to oppose this amendment. I think it's redundant. The committee has addressed many of these issues already in the underlying bill, and I thank the chairman for that, and I yield back.
Mr. DeFazio?
The section that the chairman spoke to about the evacuation study is actually in at my behest. I started raising the issue of pitch, many years ago. In fact, it took me 7 years to get the requirement of the over-wing spacing after an accident in Manchester, England, where people were stacked up like cordwood and died in a survivable crash because they couldn't get out the over-wing exit because of the congestion, because of the spacing of the seats. I offered it once in committee. I lost. We finally got a regulation. It took 7 years. This would be a time when I might agree with some of this, speeding up the agency stuff. In any case, it's a very, very serious issue. We are not doing real evacuation tests anymore. And a lot of the ones that were done previously were not legitimate. Airline employees trained on how to get out of the plane quickly, pretending that you could jam in more seats and people could get out safely. I kept asking the FAA to go witness one, and they kept forgetting to tell me when they had a new type that they were going to certify, and I never got to see one of the phonied up tests. And then they said, oh, people are getting injured, we'll stop the tests, and we will model on the faulty tests that you can evacuate these planes with people jammed in like this. So the study that's embedded in this bill, I believe, is critical to go back and evaluate whether or not we can really meet the evacuation standards. Inherent in that, I believe, is the issue that the gentleman is proposing. It will go both to pitch, and they'll be looking at all the issues that relate to a real evacuation drill as opposed to a simulation on a computer. This is, however, a very prescriptive amendment saying they shall promulgate rules on the width, et cetera. I'm not sure how we are going to best, resolve this issue. But the point is, I think what we put in the bill is going to move us along so we have the knowledge we need. And then if we have to get prescriptive, then if the FAA blows it off or the airlines, delay the study and whatever requirements FAA thinks are necessary, then I think it would be time to get much more assertive and prescriptive. But for now, I'm comfortable the chairman accepted my language in the bill to go back and take a real look at whether or not we can safely evacuate these planes with these passenger loads with this seat spacing. And I share a lot of the concerns of the gentleman. Very few people spend more time on airplanes than I do. And when a seat is too small for me, I can't imagine what the average. I'm a little below average in size these days, I think, and I'm shrinking as I get older. So, with that, Mr. Chairman, you'll.
I agree with Mr. DeFazio. Anybody else to be heard? Mr. Nolan. We're going to be here all night, you know that. We got 45 minutes. That's okay with me, but we're going to be here all night. I think this is pretty well summed up. But go ahead, Mr.
Well, I would just add that while these are private airlines, they're very much involved in an important critical public service of which has become mass transit for this country. And I would only add that it's not only a health and safety issue. At some level, it's a comfort issue. I sat in a seat on my last flight with a big-shouldered guy, and for crying out loud, he had his knees up around his shoulders, and half of his body was in my seat, and it was just unbearably uncomfortable. And I've witnessed some of those fights, guy trying to squeeze into a seat and caught a hold of a woman's hair in the seat in front of her, and she's screaming at him because he pulled her hair, and he's screaming at her for screaming at him. I mean, it's getting out of line. And I really like this amendment. I want to commend Representative Cohen for bringing this to the forefront, because it is about the size of the seats, and it is about the length of space that you have in front of you. And as he pointed out, you know, with the factual information, we've just gotten bigger as people. We're wider, we're taller, and the seats are getting narrower and shorter in between them. It's a health, it's a safety issue, and it's a comfort issue to the American public. Now, in the interest of good humor and civility, I'd be glad to yield the remainder of my time to my good friend, Mr. Davis.
Please, Mr. Davis, don't take it.
I would yield that time back.
Thank you. Any other members wish to be heard? Seeing none, any amendments to the amendment? All those in favor of Mr. Cohen's amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.